yet, the prevailing view that the dog was derived from a self-taming group of garbage-dump grazing, juvenilized wolves during the Mesolithic age, when our forebears, beginning in the Near East or Southeast Asia or both, renounced their big game-hunting migratory ways for exploitation of a more diverse local food base, including more aquatic life, game of different sizes, and nuts and grains. In fact, about the only certainty left by the fall of 2010 was the identification of the gray wolf as the wild progenitor of the dog, the two being closer genetically than are the races of humans. Dog remains dating from around 16,000 years ago in the Ukraine, 27,000 years ago in the Czech Republic, and more than 30,000 years ago in Belgium were identified. The finds firmly established Europe as the continent with the oldest dogs on record, even though no expert believes that dogs originated there, and more definitively established the dog as a creation of hunting and gathering people on the move. Increasingly sophisticated genetic analyses have suggested that just a few mutations with large morphological effects, reduced size, dwarfed legs, and brachycephalic or punched-in snouts, for example, account for the physiological and perhaps the behavioral differences between dog and wolf. For example, a 20-pound animal with bowed, dwarfed legs and a broad, flat nose, like a Pekingese, is going to see and move through the world far differently from a 150-pound mastiff or a 50-pound sloogie, with its long, straight legs capable of speeding close to 30 miles an hour. Moreover, despite evidence that the little Middle Eastern wolves might serve as foundation stock for the dog, the most sophisticated and thorough genetic survey to date by researchers in the laboratory of Robert K. Wayne, an evolutionary biologist at the University of California at Los Angeles, failed to point to a place where the transformation occurred. Rather, it appears that several types of dog were consolidated from the mixing of Middle Eastern dog wolves with those derived from other wolves. The question of the dog's origins becomes even more complicated by the association of wolves with hominins, most notably Homo erectus and Homo neanderthalis, who preceded the arrival of our species among the hunters of the Pleistocene. Did they have socialized wolves, and even dog wolves? Without firm evidence of the hominins' direct association with wolves, I suggest that even if they did, their animals do not figure in the evolution of the dog in human society. Nonetheless, the hominins cannot be ignored, since they were full members of the guild of carnivores, the big predators who fed on the migrating herds of reindeer and horse. To keep them in proper perspective relative to their other guild members, I often refer to them as furless bipeds, because they lack their own fur. I also use the term socialized, rather than tamed, wolves, to emphasize that the animals were active participants in the process, and that their behavior and adjustment to humans went far beyond simple taming. In cases where socialized wolves existed in sufficient number to form reproducing groups in human camps, I call their offspring dog wolves, or dog-like wolves, a descriptive I find more accurate than the traditional wolf dogs or wolf-like dogs. These names represent a world of difference. Dog wolves are wolves that genetically and behaviorally are dogs. We know this because their genetic profile more closely aligns with dog than wolf, and because they reproduce and live in human society, looking out on their wild cousins. But these dogs do not appear in the fossil record with the physiological changes that archaeologists consider essential to calling an animal domesticated, including an overall reduction in size and robustness, and a shortening and broadening of the muzzle that forced crowding of the teeth before they too became smaller. That size reduction, shortening of the nose and jaws, and other physical changes increasingly appear caused by specific genetic mutations that arose in particular dog-wolf lines, and became highly desired because of their uniqueness and utility. Seen in that light, there was no identifiable domestication event. Rather, mutations were captured and passed on, for reasons of utility or desire or amusement or lassitude in certain populations of dog wolves.